In this village in the north of China, people work in agriculture. They are poor, water is precious, houses have no heating or sanitary facilities. Peter spends his life traveling from one village to another. He has no house of his own. In 23 villages, families host him for a night or two. And everything he owns, he carries in one bag.
Every day I go to celebrate Mass. I hear confessions and I visit the sick. I spend 1 or 2 days in each village. On a Sunday, there are 3 or 4 Masses in places we've selected so that many people can attend.
Father Peter has been a Catholic priest for 12 years. 4 of them he spent in this parish. People look forward to his visits, and in this house he is considered part of the family. But what he is doing is illegal. He is a priest of the underground church.
We are suffering persecution. The freedom of the church in China is still very far away. But we have to trust, because Jesus told us, "Do not be afraid." The church in Rome was persecuted for 300 years, and in the end she obtained freedom.
So far, the Chinese government tolerates religion only under the strict control of so-called patriotic associations. Their purpose is to ensure that religious beliefs do not threaten the party line.
One could even say that there are 3 churches. One depends entirely on the patriotic association. Another belongs to both the Pope and to the patriotic association. And the last one is completely loyal to the Pope.
And it's a question of loyalty, not only for priests.
I was baptized in the Patriotic Church. Then later I found out that there are 2 churches, the Patriotic Church and the Underground Church. So I began to pray, asking God to make me understand which one is the real church.
Christians who do not surrender their faith to government directives are driven underground. They are in danger of being arrested at any moment. Mass is celebrated in secret, since makeshift churches can be torn down by the local authorities from one day to the next.
I was baptized as a child. During the Cultural Revolution, Catholics were persecuted. They beat me up and I abandoned the faith. During those years, I did not give glory to God. But even if I have not always been faithful, I believe God is the real God.
Sharing a priest between 23 villages requires the participation of everyone.
I read the Bible with people and talk to them about the Christian life. I visit the old and the sick, and in the summer I hold catechism classes for young people to help them learn about the teachings of the Church.
In villages like these, most people know nothing about Christianity. but they noticed how Catholics pray with the sick, and that makes them understand that God loves us.
I'm a farm labourer. I didn't finish elementary school, but I can play the keyboard. And even though I don't play very well, I can accompany the singing in Mass, and I thank God for this gift.
Like everything else in the underground church, education has to take place in secret. These young men attend university like thousands of other students. What their classmates don't know is that they lead a double life. They belong to a clandestine community where they are being trained to become priests.
Before going to university, we had a great desire to evangelize students there. But then we thought that if we want to stay at the university for a long time, we have to be very careful to avoid the risk of being found out. Our principal aim now is to study. Once we have finished our study, we will then have more freedom to evangelize.
To avoid being detected, the students split into small groups and temporarily move into apartments that Catholic families put at their disposal. Compared to their seminary, this home is luxurious. The rigorous daily routine, however, remains the same. The day starts at 4 a.m. and includes cooking and cleaning, as well as prayer and study. The best room has been converted into a chapel. Unrecognizable to the untrained eye, a decorated liquor box holds the Eucharistic bread.
Sometimes we are discovered, then we have to change house. So we have been to various places. When I was a seminarian, we changed 3 times. Each time we moved secretly, in the middle of the night. Sometimes seminarians of the Patriotic Church come to join us. We have to be prudent about this, because we are afraid they may be spies.
The rector himself knows prison from the inside. However, what he worries about most is not jail, but the quality of theological training he can offer.
Our greatest difficulty is that we don't have professors. The rector of each seminary teaches a bit of everything, but in the end we don't manage to teach anything properly. Another problem is that we don't have good books to study from.
Lucas Lee was born in 1922. He spent 23 years of his life in prison and labour camps. This is typical for a bishop of his generation. The first wave of persecution began when the communists came to power in 1949. Missionaries were expelled. Church property was confiscated. Priests and bishops were incarcerated, and many of them killed. By the time Lucas Lee was first imprisoned, he knew there was nothing else to expect.
Persecutio naturalis. Si non est persecutio, est miraculum. Ita, nulla tristitia, nullus dolor, nec timor. Pati. Christus passus est pro nobis.
In 1966, the persecution intensified when Mao launched the Cultural Revolution to purge his political opponents. It lasted a decade, killed millions, and destroyed the fabric of Chinese society. Religion in general and the Catholic Church in particular were targeted as counter-revolutionary.
他们在外边的比在监狱里的数据还大。
Churches were destroyed, seminaries closed, and clergy killed or jailed.
我自己确实是没有受的大的苦。Fortis, Fidelis， 这个 novice Christian，new Christian， 新的坚强热血，没有的侮辱打骂，打了，是什么？I am a priest of Catholic Church. If you 骂的啥 scourge 嘛，骂我们骂了地区的什么没 persona 嘛，国之强 neglect， 是骂了地区是没个我的挂我的撒球多的嘛，你个地没有，你个地没有。
Deng Xiaoping's liberalization program in 1978 began to open doors for the return of religion to Chinese public life. But this limited religious freedom came at a price, the price of being controlled by the so-called patriotic associations set up under Mao Zedong to ensure the compatibility of religion with Communist Party ideals. For Catholics, joining the patriotic association meant renouncing papal authority. Lucas Lee refused to do so.
If do not unite with Rome, Vatican, Pope, we are not Catholic. 就这么重要。
This bishop achieved something exceptional in China. Since his release from prison, good relations with the government have allowed him to bypass the patriotic association in running his diocese. Bishop Lucas Lee never renounced the Pope and still manages to operate in the open.
Has miracle. Patriotic association, patriotic, never come to me, never talk with me, never. 直到今天，我故事个奥迪，那么 X association patriotic， logo do ses没过。 No.
Lucas Lee's greatest strength is that all the priests in his diocese stand behind him. In Lucas Lee's diocese, Catholics faithful to Rome don't have to worship in secret.
In our diocese, we've built about 30 new churches. This is possible because with the opening up of China, the property of the church has been returned to us. And here, the local government is tolerant, so we have been able to do this.
So right under the government's eyes, this new church was built. Chinese on the outside, but decidedly Roman on the inside.
We have built this church in Chinese style. In general, the faithful prefer European-style churches, which manifest that our faith comes from Rome. Our bishop encouraged us to build in the Chinese style as a sign of the enculturation of the Catholic faith.
In the village of Zhanyongtu, 700 miles from Beijing, the ideological divide between religion and atheist communism has been bridged by two men. The Catholic parish priest and the Communist Party secretary joined forces to give a school to the local children.
We rebuilt this school with thanks to our parish priest and with the help of a German foundation. The Catholic Church stands by its promises. They supported us from the beginning of the construction to the end. At the beginning, the government was critical, but in the end, after having talked to various officials in charge, they let us go ahead.
The party secretary's approach to Christianity is pragmatic.
In this area, there are a lot of Christians. They are model citizens. The authorities recognize this fact and don't interfere with church activities. The reputation of Christians here is that they are exemplary in the way they respect the law.
Lucas Lee's diocese is sometimes presented as the paradigm of new and improved relations. There are some cases of Protestants and the Russian Orthodox being able to operate without affiliating with a government association. But so far, this kind of arrangement seems only possible at a safe distance from Beijing. Whether the government would tolerate this freedom on a larger scale remains to be seen. Religion is still one of China's best-kept secrets. No one knows how many religious believers there are in China, but everyone agrees on this. The numbers are huge and they are growing fast, and Chinese scholars are beginning to analyze this new X factor. Professor Tong Zhijun of Shanghai University conducted the first ever large-scale poll on religious adherence in China. He found that 31.4% of people consider themselves religious. That means about 300 million Chinese pray. The results far exceeded the official statistics.
The number of the people who claim themselves to be believers in some sort of religious systems is higher than we expected. People now in China are more open in expressing themselves. In the past, probably people would hesitate to express themselves to be religious or not.
Another assumption undermined by the study regards social class.
We expected that people in economically better off area would have less religious interests, but that proves not the case.
The study, financed by the Chinese Ministry of Education, is part of a new and more relaxed approach to the old enemy, religion.
The government has shown more attention to the role of religions in constructing the so-called socialist harmonious society. In the past, the attitude towards the religions were more or less, cautious. There were more negative, preventive attitudes in the past.
Attitudes to religion may be changing, but the proposed solution is still the same: Marxism.
Marxism can also meet the growing demands for spiritual life, for meaning of life in China. There is a growing interest in spiritual life, in spiritual dimension among Chinese people. But in China, as I said, which is a traditionally secular nation, this kind of demand for spiritual life, this kind of demand for meaning of life can also and more possibly be met by secular ideologies.
Professor Tong's suggestion that Marxism can be the opium of the people is at odds with data collected by the Chinese Communist Party. According to its disciplinary commission, 20 of the 60 million party members are believers and 10 million regularly participate in religious services. The Chinese leadership abandoned Marxist economics for capitalism. Now the question is whether atheism is next. Buddhism has a 2,000-year history in China. It arrived from India, and there were times when it was rejected as too Western. Now it has been around for so long that it is no longer viewed as a foreign religion.
The majority of the religious believers in China are Buddhists, or Buddhist in the not very strict sense, because many of them can also pay tribute to Taoist temples, for example. That's typical in China. People are not very strict in their religious systems.
The Faiyuansi temple dates back to Buddhism's golden age in the 7th century. Today, the temple structure houses the Buddhist Academy, founded in 1956 by the government-run Chinese Buddhist Association. The academy trains young monks for 4 to 5 years before they can enter other monasteries in China. The academy accepts 1 out of 4 applicants who must pass tests not only in Buddhism, but also in politics and English. The government tries to keep tight control of the financial affairs of Buddhist and Taoist temples. Buddhist centers like the Temple of the Dragon Pool and the Mulberry Tree have lost their importance as monasteries and under the guidance of the Chinese Buddhist Association have been developed as tourist attractions. Followers of Tibetan Buddhism face more severe restrictions. The government suspects Tibetan separatism behind religious activities, such as venerating the Dalai Lama, so it suppresses them as politically subversive. Dozens of Tibetan monks and nuns are serving prison terms for their resistance to patriotic or political education. Along with Buddhism and Taoism, hundreds of millions of Chinese citizens worship local gods, heroes, or ancestors. Though such folk religions are discouraged as superstitious, the government is much harder on those unregistered religious groups that it classifies as cults. Though Falun Gong does not consider itself a religion, it is considered a cult, and membership is illegal. Its members have been arrested, jailed, and tortured. The figures about Muslims in China range from 20 to 40 million. 45,000 imams are licensed to teach in China's 40,000 registered mosques. Mao Zedong did not see Islam as a force of Western imperialism and adopted a more enlightened policy towards Muslims. At the time, the regime was anxious to establish good relations with the Muslim governments of the Middle East. Some say that the need for oil from Muslim countries helped procure greater religious freedom for Chinese Muslims, including allowance pilgrimages to Mecca. The Islamic Association of China, the party's arm to control Islam, was founded in 1953. Very soon, the first translation of the Quran into Chinese was prepared under communist supervision and stressed the compatibility between Islam and Marxism. Ibrahim Li Shu Wen is one of the imams of Nuji Mosque, the oldest and largest mosque in Beijing, where one of the buildings functions as a site for female Muslims. Under the Islamic Association of China, female imams and all-female mosques have been introduced. Muslims elsewhere denounce this development as deviation from Islamic teaching, but Imam Ibrahim is more concerned with fitting into Chinese society.
The teachings and the laws of our religion require that we Muslims contribute to society, that we do our work and make an honest living.
These Muslims belong to a sect that will not join the Muslims of Nuji Mosque to pray. They are on a pilgrimage to the tombs of Persian missionaries who preached Islam in China in the 14th century. In China, too, differences between Muslim sects exist, but as a potential source of conflict, they are not officially acknowledged. Imam Ibrahim cautions that even interreligious dialogue could be a source of conflict.
We don't really have much interreligious dialogue because each religion is so different, and these differences can lead to arguments, which only lead to greater conflicts. So on the whole, we try to avoid that.
The government seems equally interested in avoiding conflict and grants Muslims a number of privileges. They are permitted holidays during Islamic festivals, and their schools can provide religious education. But not all Muslim communities are treated the same. In predominantly Muslim areas where ethnic unrest has occurred, police tightly control religious activity. In the region of Xinjiang, Muslim teachers, professors, and university students are not allowed to practice religion openly, and children under 18 are not permitted to attend religious services in mosques. Christianity is not a new Western import. As early as the 13th century, the medieval traveller Marco Polo reported the existence of Christian communities in China, and it would appear that Christianity had arrived as early as the 7th century, almost a millennium before it reached America. After Mao's nationalist revolution, Christianity seemed to have no future. Many of China's churches were destroyed and are still in ruins. Others were closed. Yet the growth rate of Christians in mainland China has been astoundingly steep in comparison to Taiwan and Hong Kong, where Christianity can be preached and practiced freely. The most stunning growth is that of the Protestant churches. From 1 million in 1949, now estimates are up to around 20 million official and 30 million independent Protestant believers. One of them is Hu Yijun, who practiced Buddhism and Taoism until he discovered the Bible.
I've been a Christian for only 7 years. 7 years ago, the church was half empty, but now they need to build a new church because the number of people has increased so much, and it's mostly young people. I am so happy that more and more young people are becoming Christians.
A study conducted by China's Open University showed that 60% of Beijing students are interested in Christianity and want to be believers. Most of them search for information on the internet.
Nowadays, more and more Chinese people understand English, and the internet has no borders, so they can learn a lot about Western culture. So it's natural that they will have some contact with Christian thought and culture.
Printing and distributing Bibles and other Christian materials are Protestant priorities. Hu Yijun runs a media company. His aim is to publish books and video programs that communicate Christian values without being overly preachy. He hopes this is just the beginning.
I hope in the future that it will be possible for Christians to set up independent publishing houses, television stations, and film production companies in China.
Tens of thousands of Protestant church groups are not registered. Their members and leaders are sometimes harassed by local government officials, and church buildings are torn down. Protestant Christians maintain that clampdowns may have less to do with ideological opposition to religion and more to do with fear of popular mobilization outside government control.
I think that a good Christian will automatically be a good citizen. We follow the 10 Commandments, and they are much more demanding than the laws that we are required to follow in order to be good citizens.
What's difficult to control about Protestants is the spread of house churches. The Catholic Church, highly hierarchical and with headquarters outside China, poses another kind of problem. To keep Catholics under control, the Communist Party aimed at cutting the connection with Rome and set up the Patriotic Association. Its aim was to direct the church from inside China and along the party line.
The Patriotic Catholic Association is neither a church nor a religious order. It is a patriotic collective formed by Catholic priests and lay people. Its task is not religious. Its goal within the special system of Chinese communism is to build a bridge between the church and the government.
Liu Baiyan is a Catholic layman. As head of the Patriotic Association, Liu Baiyan oversees everything that happens in the official church: how the money is spent, what can be preached, who can be a bishop. Of China's estimated 12 to 20 million Catholics, 4.5 million are registered with the Catholic Patriotic Association. So big is Mr. Liu's influence that he is sometimes called the Chinese Pope.
The Protestants are growing much faster. So you may ask yourself why the Chinese Catholic community doesn't grow as fast. What's the reason for this? It's because of the head of the Catholic Church. The Vatican still maintains diplomatic relations with Taiwan, something hard for Chinese people to understand.
In the past, the Pope was completely removed from sight. But recently a new line of thinking has prevailed. Since the 1990s, prayers for the Pope have been included in the Mass, and his spiritual leadership is recognized publicly. But only up to a point.
Caesar is Caesar. God is God. They are separate, especially in China. We, the Chinese Church, we respect the Bible, and in matters of faith, we listen to the Pope. In matters concerning the nation, we listen to the government.
Nantang Cathedral in Beijing goes back to the third arrival of Christianity in China. The first Christians to reach China were Nestorians of the 7th century. In the 13th century, Franciscans preached to the Mongols in Beijing. But when the Jesuit missionaries reached the city in 1582, Christianity had all but disappeared. The Jesuits became respected scholars, frequented the imperial court, and ended up making 500,000 converts. Matteo Ricci, the most famous of these Jesuits, was given this land by the emperor and became the first parish priest of what today is Nantang Cathedral. Ricci's successor as parish priest of Nantang Church is Francis Xavier Zhang. Zhang is also the local secretary of the Patriotic Association of Beijing. According to him, the original break between Rome and Beijing was caused by anti-communist prejudice.
The foreigners, missionaries, they very oversensitive to the point of view of philosophical atheism of Communist Party. It's not Chinese Catholic Church in China reject Pope, but the Holy See reject the Catholic Church in China.
Cutting ties with Rome caused a split among Chinese Catholics. According to Father Francis Xavier, neither the government nor the Patriotic Church have any responsibility in this division. He blames those who stayed with Rome.
This division came from the historical, political reason, or religious prejudice, or selfishness, or spiritual arrogance. It's nothing to do with faith. So underground church, the brothers sisters in Christ, who having been influenced by the prejudice, the political reason, then they prefer to stay in the underground, like in London, metro station, underground, without the sunshine, like scattering everywhere.
Underground Christians do not share Father Zhang's view, but consider themselves part of a long tradition, suffering the consequences of speaking truth to power. Collaboration with the government has many advantages. Restitution of property, permission and economic help to build new churches, and the freedom to organize catechesis and Bible study. But there is also a price to pay. The hands of the open church are tied when Christian values clash with party directives, such as the one-child policy, often enforced through abortions. An example of what happens to those who do not accept this kind of compromise are Paul and Mary.
We have 5 children, and as you know, in China, the government allows only 1 child for each family, so we were punished. My wife has been arrested for this.
When families have more children than permitted, the government punishes this with fines. Paul's family was too poor to pay the fine, so police confiscated the furniture instead. But Paul and Mary are convinced they made the right decision. They are underground Christians.
The fifth commandment teaches that you cannot kill or do harm to yourself, and much less to your children. Our priests often speak about this, and as you can see, there are many abortions in our country, and in our case we've thought not to have any more children, but now we see them as a blessing from God.
Da Wei, too, thinks that children are a blessing, and she has lots of them. She lives in the countryside where boys are more valued than girls. In the 90s, Da Wei, together with other women, formed a religious community independent of the Patriotic Association. The sisters started to take in children that had been abandoned on the streets and in rubbish heaps. Most of them were girls. To live with the children as a family, the women dug a hole into this mountain and built a makeshift shelter.
At the beginning, they left the children by our door, and as we had more and more children, we looked for families to take the healthy ones, but the handicapped remained with us.
The family grew, and with help, more than 100 children have passed through St. Joseph's family. Most have been adopted by Christian families. Today, the sisters are left with the children who no one wants.
They are left abandoned because they are handicapped. In this case, people do treat boys and girls in the same way. If they are handicapped, there is no difference.
Medical care in China has become a luxury not affordable for most of the rural population. If a newborn needs extraordinary medical care, the families here know that the only hope is St. Joseph's family. But there is no government funding, and so if money from abroad runs out, some of the children left on the doorstep cannot be treated in time.
When we find children abandoned on the street, we baptize and register them. Then we take them directly to the hospital to see whether they need medical attention. And if they do, we need to find money to pay for it.
The sisters are helped in their work by the villagers. For most of them, St. Joseph's family is their first encounter with Christianity.
They are moved by how Catholics love these abandoned children, and especially by what the sisters do. For women, things are always more difficult, and so they give us clothes and come and visit us, bringing sweets for the children.
The work of faith-based programs in China is rarely reported. Official control over the media allows the government to attribute the success of faith-based programs to local authorities while maintaining an anti-religious stance. One Catholic charity, Aid to the Church in Need, has been working to support pastoral projects in China for almost 20 years. One such initiative, vital to the local church, is religious publications. Religious literature published without authorization is regularly confiscated. The publishers are arrested and jailed. It is one of the privileges of registered religions to be allowed to publish books. Over the past 20 years, Chinese Catholic publishing houses have printed over 5 million books, from Bibles and missals to theology and biographies of saints. Faith Press in Hebei was founded in 1991 by Jean-Baptiste Zhang. What started as a small printing press is now the largest Catholic publishing company with more than 240 titles in its catalogue. It also publishes Faith Fortnightly, which, with nearly 60,000 subscribers, is the most widely circulated Catholic paper in China.
There are a lot of changes from past to today. For example, I give you example in the past 10 years ago. For example, there's no the picture of the Holy Father in our newspaper. But now, I will show you there's so many pictures of the Holy Father.
But there is a limit to this new freedom. When Father John Baptist wanted to publish the new Catechism of the Catholic Church, he was confronted with a problem.
This is the new Catechism of the Catholic Church. At the beginning, we could not publish it. The reason is there is something anti-socialism and communism. But finally, our late Holy Father, John Paul II, gave us special permission for China. So we removed the sentence from here. This is blank. So we are able to publish. So now here is the book.
Like any other publisher, Father John Baptist tries to print books that people want to buy.
We could not publish something not suitable to our society. So most books, I think we publish all the books are welcome in China by the Catholics and society.
Christian views on abortion and the death penalty are topics too hot to handle in a country with a one-child policy and 10,000 executions a year. Where Christian doctrine clashes with government thinking, Father Zhang has to toe the line. For the Catholic Church, full religious freedom crucially includes the freedom to appoint its own leaders. The state-sponsored church has been ordaining bishops without permission from Rome since 1958. Under church law, this incurs excommunication, the most severe punishment. But Rome has consistently avoided speaking of schism. Beyond theological concerns, external observers point out that the system is open to manipulation.
The government are trying to guarantee that they will never facing an unacceptable or unfriendly candidate. Those who would like to be a bishop will sometimes try to please the local official. And the local official also would like to please their own preferable candidates. And that kind of practice is nothing but corruption. And corruption is the biggest problem now in China.
Most of the bishops that were chosen by the government later requested and gained papal approval. Many of them have made their approval public and have suffered no punishment, though such requests are technically illegal. Bishop Zhang Taoran is one of the few bishops still not approved by Rome. Despite the fact that in the past he actively participated in bishops' ordinations without Rome's authorization, he openly talks about his wish to be recognized by the Pope.
Until now, my request hasn't been granted formally. Over the years, I have asked for recognition by the Pope many times.
While Bishop Zhang is keen to be legitimized, he is also convinced that the Open Church's practice of bypassing the Pope is not a cause of division.
The Open Church is longing to be united with Rome. The division is not the fault of the Open Church. It is because the underground church doesn't want to stay together with us.
Legitimization of a patriotic bishop also affects underground Catholics. They are asked to trust him. Many Catholics may find it difficult to accept Bishop Taoran, particularly as the underground bishop of the same town is regularly imprisoned, harassed, and lives under house arrest. For official bishops, legitimization has only advantages, but only time will tell whether the desire to be recognized by Rome is matched by a desire to follow Rome.
Speedy legitimization will give a scandal to other people. The underground church and also those who stand firm, the open church people, they would feel that they are betrayed by the Holy See. Why they should suffer so much? To resist any pressure and to safeguard the our unity of the church.
Of about 40 bishops operating underground, all are under government surveillance, and most face repeated short-term detentions. 13 are imprisoned or under house arrest. 2 are missing. After years of estrangement in the 20th century, Beijing and Rome may be about to settle their differences. A key figure in the negotiations is Joseph Zen Zhe-kyun, the only Chinese cardinal.
I think surely when they come to negotiate, that's the first point they should demand, that finally they release those in jail. Yeah. Those bishops, priests never committed anything against law, but they were put in jail just because of their religious principles. Yeah.
The new China will have to work out with the various churches whether they will be allowed to organize themselves and choose their own leaders. Shanghai serves as a test case for the future. Aloysius Jin accepted to be ordained a bishop without papal authorization in 1985 at the age of 70. He took over Shanghai Diocese while the legitimate bishop was under house arrest. Though Aloysius Jin chose to collaborate, he has in recent years distanced himself from the Patriotic Association.
In Shanghai, I have a patriotic association, but the members are very obedient to me. I am happy with them because the bishop here has all the power.
Aloysius Jin will soon be succeeded by a young bishop, and he was ordained with the Pope's approval. Recently, Rome has been able to discreetly choose candidates who were then supposedly elected by the official church in China. The result is a hierarchy acceptable to Rome while allowing Beijing to save face. Aged 43, Joseph Xing Wenzi belongs to a new generation of open church clerics who never even joined the Patriotic Association.
Here in Shanghai, it is not absolutely necessary for priests to be a member of the Patriotic Association. I am not.
To be accepted by all Catholics as the bishop of a diocese, the approval of Rome is the crucial factor.
If there is no express permission from the Pope, the local church will not accept it easily. The tendency is like that. If there is no permission from the Pope, it is difficult to carry on our work.
The give and take between Rome and Beijing is a point of friction for underground Catholics. Since the Vatican has become involved in the selection of bishops of the official church, no underground bishops have been appointed, leaving many clandestine Catholics without leaders. A reconciliation between the two communities now depends on the readiness of underground Christians to accept the new open church leaders.
I know many of them, the bishops, priests, sisters, and lay people in China for already over 27 years. The underground church people, they have deeper faith. So that's which is very valuable. And they have a more spirit of sacrifice, self-sacrificing.
Maybe, if an agreement with Beijing can be reached, priests who are now members of the underground church can one day serve as bishops for both communities. Many of the Chinese interested in Christianity have their first contact with the open churches. But not all of them stay in the open. Some of them go underground, attracted by the idea of uncompromising loyalty and heroism. In their eyes, the Vatican seems to be making concessions at a time when Beijing is less capable than ever to suppress the underground communities.
And this kind of hyper society, actually, is no way to crack down by a government. And the new technological development in China help the underground priests to work more freely, and they are working 24 hours. Nobody can stop a real Catholic underground community.
Since China abandoned communist economics 25 years ago, it has recorded the fastest growth rate of any nation in history. But here, communism isn't simply an economic theory. For half a century, it has been the glue keeping this large country together.
The government in China says that the changes and the downfall of communism in Europe happened because of the Pope's intervention. So they are afraid of the Pope, and they are afraid of Catholics.
But the new China has begun to learn that religion need not be a source of social conflict. In the pursuit of building a harmonious society, China's leadership seems prepared to abandon, little by little, its anti-religious bias. Yet this new freedom has its limits. The regime still tries to micromanage religion, monitoring all religious practice, requiring clergy to publicly endorse government policies. Students in state-supervised seminaries have to demonstrate political reliability. The law does not prohibit believers from holding public office. However, Communist Party membership is required for almost all high-level positions, and Communist Party members are supposed to be atheists. The regulations of the People's Liberation Army state that servicemen may not take part in religious or superstitious activities. Offences related to unapproved religion are often classified as crimes disturbing social order. This allows the government to claim that no one is in prison for their faith. Members of unregistered religious groups can be sent to re-education labour camps for up to 3 years without a trial. Beyond fines and periodic detentions, those who refuse to join the official churches may also lose their job and have their children barred from school.
We hope that they really have a look of the whole world, and they should realize that religion is a very normal factor in the civilized life, and they should have nothing to be afraid of.
On the way to becoming the world's next superpower, China is also experiencing a phenomenal resurgence of religion. How the government copes with God in China will reveal whether the country is finally heading for democracy.